Can you all hear me okay? Can I get a nod? Great. Well, hello and welcome to the 2023 Forge Prize finalists live presentations. This year marks a very major milestone as we are now 5 years into the witnessing of amazing talent through the creation of the Forge Prize. And we are so very excited to have you all join us today. The Forge Prize live presentations will be hosted by yours truly, Alex Morales with the American Institute of Steel Construction, and my co-host in case of technical difficulties will be Mr. David Fennell, also with the American Institute of Steel Construction. Now, to give you all a lay of the land, and for the audience joining us remotely, the Forge Prize was established by AISC to support and to recognize the hard work of emerging architects who explore imaginative ways of designing with structural steel. And so over the past months, these 3 finalists have worked with expert minds in the fields of steel fabrication, design, and construction to bring you provocative visions of steel for our buildings of the future. These finalists have also already received $5,000 as part of being selected during phase 1 of the competition. And today they'll reveal their improved proposals for a chance to win an additional $10,000, and one team will be recognized as the official 2023 Forge Prize recipient. At the end of the presentation, the audience will have a chance to vote for their favorite design and support their designers. So we encourage you to cheer them on and use the polling feature to support your team as part of architecture engagement in the public. Now, helping us make the final selection, of course, for the second runner-up, and then we'll have a first runner-up, and finally, the grand prize winner will be this year's of esteemed judges. Each designer will have their time to present, followed by commentary and Q&A with our 3 judges. Now, the judges will then deliberate in private at the very end of the presentation, so stay tuned as they return live with the results, including the official announcement of the 2023 Forge Prize recipient. Now, of course, before we begin, we'd like to formally recognize the people who have worked with our designers to make this possible. And so we'll begin with our jury. Rona G. Rothenberg, FAIA DBIA. Rona Rothenberg is a senior architect at Jacobs and immediate past president of AIA California. She's devoted her career to service as an architect in government and industry. She's been a program and project management leader within public and private sector institutions for the past 35 years, including 2 decades in California's state and local government. She's provided executive level leadership in master planning, design, and construction delivery of over 200 institutional projects in multiple programs in government, industry, healthcare, and higher education. Throughout her career, Rothenberg has contributed to AIA national, state, and local board and committee leadership in justice and community-based projects as a city planning commissioner and in government and nonprofit board appointments. For these contributions, Rothenberg received the AIA 2020 Thomas Jefferson Award for Public Architecture. Melanie Harris, AIA LSS YB NCARB. As an expert in healthcare architecture, Harris is currently the National Healing Practice Director at BSA Life Structures. Harris became passionate about people's well-being at age 15 when her mother passed of cancer. But instead of pursuing a career in medicine, she's devoted herself to architecture for healing. She's worked with clients like MD Anderson Cancer Center since she earned her master's degree from Texas A&M University in 2006. Whoop! She's joined HOK's Houston Healthcare Studio in 2014 and in 2017 transitioned to lead HOK's healthcare practice in Central Florida. She started as BSA's principal for Tampa in 2020 before moving into her current role as National Healing Practice Director. Sean Joyner. Sean Joyner is a writer and essayist based in Los Angeles. He is currently a writer and communications strategist at Perkins & Will and previously served as adjunct professor and director of communications at Woodbury University, where he received his Bachelor of Architecture degree. Joyner's essays and articles typically explore themes spanning history, pop culture, and philosophy, and how they connect to the field of architecture, though his topics really do vary quite widely. Before launching his career in writing, Joyner worked in several firms as a designer and project leader, primarily in K-12 and higher education work. Our fabricator mentors: Jim Buchan of Alpha Iron, Christian Crosby of Shelf Steel, and Casey Brown of Zimcor. We'll now have a quick word from our mentor fabricators on their experience working with the designers, beginning with Jim Buchan. So at this point, I'll stop sharing my screen. And Jim, if you could just go ahead and chime in, please.
Hello, I'm Jim Buchan, the president of Alpha Iron in Ridgefield, Washington. And this has been a wonderful experience to work with Masa and Junior. The creation of the microcity where you can live, work, and play in one location is just amazing. The concept really came to life with me because of their idea could be easily built, and we create a great quality of life as well as the transformation of an industrial Superfund site. We were able to collaborate on the design and the constructability of this microcity to be built economically, very quickly, and keep the beautiful design intact that you're going to see in their presentation. I wish Masa and Junior the best of luck. It has been a pleasure to work with you both on this project, and I'm sure everybody's going to enjoy their presentation. Take care.
Thanks so much, Jim. Let's go ahead and move it on with Christian.
Thanks, Alex. My name is Christian Crosby. I'm Senior Vice President of Fabrication for Shelf Steel. It's been an absolute joy working with Chris, Lexi, and Jeff. I really enjoyed our time together. I got to learn a lot about your all side of the business. It was great. Thank you so much. Looking forward to hearing your final presentation on your design. And I think it's an excellent opportunity to fill definitely a need out there in the marketplace for having charging stations for electric vehicles. As more and more electric vehicles get on the road, this is definitely an immediate need that we're going to need in our industry. So really looking forward to hearing your all's presentation. Chris, Lexi, Jeff, I wish you all the best. Good luck.
Thank you. Casey. Casey Brown. I think Casey did send me a note wishing Ten very much luck. He had a wonderful experience working with you, Ten Lee, with Huntsman Architectural Group, and he is quite sure that the audience is going to be quite astounded by what they've come up with together. So let's go ahead and move it forward. We'll now have the pleasure of introducing our first presenter. So let's go with our first presenter with Masamichi Ikeda and Junior Carbajal, followed by Christopher Terrasi, Lexi White, and Jeffrey Lee of Level Studio, and finally finishing with Ten Lee of Huntsman Architectural Group.
Hey everyone, my name is Ten Lee, and I'm from Huntsman Architecture, and I'm very excited to join this competition and wish everyone's luck, best of luck for this competition.
Thank you, Ten. Thank you.
All right, go ahead, gentlemen, Masa and Junior.
Oh, sorry, introduction?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
please.
Hi, my name is Masamichi. I'm originally from Japan. I am a structural engineer, and at the same time, I'm a graduate student at the University of Art Academy. I'm very pleasure to stay here, and to present our presentation. In the same time, I'm very excited to see any other competitors' presentation as well. Thank you.
Perfect. Some quick intros with Level Studio, please. Let's start with on my screen, Jeff.
Yeah, my name's Jeff Lee from Level Studio. We're very excited to be here. Definitely learned a lot in the process. And Christian, thanks for all the help along the way.
Thank you, Jeff. Lexi.
Oh, you're on mute, Lex.
Sorry. Hi, all. I'm Lexi here in Los Angeles, part of Level Studio, and we're really excited to show you what we put together.
Wonderful. Christopher Tarasi.
Yeah, I'm Chris Tarasi with Level Studio out of Brooklyn, New York. It's been a great experience. Excited to share our project and see everybody else's project.
Great. Wonderful. So now kicking off the 2023 Forge Prize live presentations, we turn this over to Masa Ikeda and Junior Carbajal of JRMA. And of course, we wish great luck to all of our finalists.
Thank you, Alex. So now let me share my screen. Okay, Junior, do you have control now?
Yeah, let me check real quick. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so first off, we'd like to thank the AISC for giving Masamichi and I the opportunity to present our idea on your platform. And most of all, thank you for picking our design as one of the top 3 finalists. I read the other contestants' ideas, and I'm very impressed with their creativity and what they have to offer. It really is an honor to be sitting here presenting next to them. So the title of our project is Adaptive Microcities because we're intrigued with the idea that architecture, when utilized as a vehicle and injected with human energy, can have the power to rejuvenate desolate spaces and turn them into desirable places. And these are the places that we work, places we live, and the places we play. We begin by asking ourselves, does architecture have the ability to draw people in? And by delivering those people, can their existence help change a community? And so we looked for an opportunity to explore this idea further and found the Linton neighborhood here in Portland, Oregon, which is located about eight miles northwest of Portland, to be a really great fit. Now, the problem with this site is that historically, Linton neighborhood has been damaged with industrialization and the abandonment of smelting plants, lumber mills, and oil refineries. What was once a practical use of Linton's riverfront has now become its own social demise. And so we found 2 main issues with this industrial residual. Number one, the absence of human presence, because the refining and the storage of oil along the riverbank, Linton has now become simply the corridor between Sauvie Island and Portland, Oregon. It's urban decay. It's really evident in the lack of interest in the neighborhood. We aim to bring more human presence from the peripherals. And secondly, the image on the right, because the majority of the riverfront is lined with heavy industrial plants running along the river, it creates a permanent barrier for the community of Linton to come down and touch the water. But through our research among all the barriers, we found an opportunity for the Linton residents to reconnect with the Willamette River by finding a sliver, a small island on the riverside, located about midway in the neighborhood boundary. And so, reflecting back on this idea of the lack of human activity and the lack of access to the river, we asked ourselves, like, what if this could be a South Waterfront 2.0 on a smaller compact scale? Now, for those of you who don't know, South Waterfront is also located here in Portland, and it was in a similar state not that long ago. It was a heavy industrial area that has since turned into a thriving mixed-use dense living district with residences, a park, and shopping on the ground level. And so again, we can begin to revitalize the Linton neighborhood, or better yet, create a microcity. And so on the site, we aim to explore this idea by creating a park with numerous activities that can harvest human presence. like an amphitheater for live music concerts or a farmer's market, just to name a few. And of course, doing building a catalyst that can spearhead the movement, that can capture the essential elements of everyday life, which we believe is the work, life, and play, is what we all pretty much do. And so we like the idea of repurposing the existing train tracks by extending the current MAX line into Linton neighborhood and essentially connecting to a greater mass transportation network to our site, possibly utilizing the same design language as our building for the stops to sort of hint at the main stage down the line. And so given the constraints, we wanted to build a system that is simplistic, could speed up constructability and have the flexibility to be assemble and disassemble for repurposing in other locations, essentially create a panelized system and like a kit of parts. And we quickly realized that these qualities are inherent in steel construction.
Okay, now take over this presentation. To make the construction simpler, easier, and faster, we came up with the idea of the 10 feet by 10 feet modular panel. The structure of the modular panel is similar to the mechanism of the cardboard. Paper is typically not strong to carry heavy load. However, by sandwiching the corrugated paper with the top and the bottom plates, structural strength can be increased. Floor or ceiling structure is similar to castellated beam, like parking garage supporter beams. Beam has a double webs to create the box beam. The box beam are arranged in a sequence to provide the floor or ceilings. 30 feet by 30 feet cube box are constructed with the combination of the modular panel and box beams. The corrugated steel plates inside play important role in the structural strength. Capacity against compressive shear and moment load can be increased by corrugated steel.
And so now that we have these cubes, we allow the size of the site to dictate the overall shape by going straight up, acknowledging that the homes on the hillside sit higher, which permits our building to go vertical. We start looking at how the steps to how this thing began to take shape. So by first stacking the cubes to accommodate the program needs, and then step number 2, to create a microcity, we partition these cubes into 3 primary groups. And then step 3, shifting them in the x-axis to create summer shading overhangs for south-facing facades. And then moving on to step 4, we shift them in the y-axis to create terraces and public spaces. And then step 5, we shift them one last time in the z-axis to interstitch those volumes together and lower its overall height. And then finally, we extrude them one last time, extruding cubes inside cubes to maximize the use of the river and allow indirect north-facing light for natural illumination. And this final shift also further shades the south-facing facades from the summer heat, but also allows the winter sunlight to enter and passively warm up the spaces. And so once we apply materials and it's all set and done, we can see that the function of the building dictates its form. And when we look at it in section, we can see how these 3 primary groups start to work together. And so now we're stepping into the inside, and this is a view of what could potentially one of the condo units could potentially look like. This is one view looking one of the office spaces. And then another one of the cafe. So then we step out to the outside and we can see what this thing could look like in this typical Oregon weather, rainy weather. Another view from a different angle at sundown. And then from above, looking at the public rooftop gardens at the resident levels. And another 3D perspective of the public space where people can gather and collaborate. And so speaking of collaboration, we would like to personally thank Jim for sharing his vast knowledge in steel fabrication and building erection experience. It was because of him and his team at Alpha Steel that we were able to look at this design in a whole new lens and gain so much more knowledge, not only for this project, for our personal careers and development. We had the opportunity to visit a state-of-the-art shop and learn so much more about steel and how it's utilized to push the boundaries in the AAC industry. During our conversation, talking about how this could thing be erected, we pretty much stayed focused on new ways of construction, how to speed up the construction, the modularity of the system, transportation, sustainability, and of course, costs.
Okay, now this is an explored structural model, and there are total 8 cubes surrounding the core structure to provide the habitable space to the building. The core structure is located at the center of the building to support these cubes, just like a tree trunk. There's another reason why we selected the size and the shape of the wall panel and the beams. The rectangle box, the square modular panel are very efficient when it comes to the transportation. And they can be stacked each other horizontally and vertically without too much wasted space. Modular panel and the box beam can be loaded on a flatbed truck without exceeding height width limitation in regulation. For example, in Oregon, 14 feet for the height and 8.5 feet for the width. Now, let me talk about the assembly. The core structure play important role to support the cube boxes, of course, but it can be used as a tower for the tower crane as well. Since site has a limited space, it could be difficult to bring the large equipment. So step one, with a small crane, a core structure installed until a certain height. And then step two, install the tower crane inside the core structure, and then install the crane boom. And three, tower crane install the more wall panel of core structure and jack up the tower crane itself with a hydraulic cylinder. This is very similar to technology of the tower crane. Operation will be repeated until the wall reached a required height. This is step 4. Next, 5, cube box are assembled in the ground. Well, just because of constructability, it's much easier to assemble everything on the ground. However, the cube box is a little bit too heavy for a tower crane. We estimated about 50 to 80 tons, a little bit too heavy. So our idea is that we temporary bracing installed to the cube's stability until the cube is completely attached to the core structure. Then cube is lifted up with multiple hydraulic cylinder for the guide rail, like I shown in the pictures, attached to the core structure. The operation is repeated for the other cubes as well. So all cube is installed, and then all components installed. So once everything is installed, then for the crane boom, and the crane boom is completely vertical now.
Got 5 minutes.
Yep, and lower the tower crane install the core structure and kept inside. Disassemble tower crane and remove a part of the core structure. Install staircase and elevator at the end. Foundation of the core structure is crucial. The core structure is attached to the mat foundation or pile cap and over the concrete drilled pile. When a wall of the core structure is installed, elector will work on the platform. However, still elector has access to the panel from only inside. The connection is a little bit tricky. So we got this idea. Keyway were provided to outer wall of the panel so that the elector doesn't need to have access from outside. The keyway is slightly tapered so that the connection had tight contact. And then the wall panel is slit horizontally to connect the keyway together. This is a corner connection that's very similar to other connection. Since cube box are assembled on the ground, elector has access to both sides. This is similar to one of the moment connection or a pipe flange connection. They are easy disassemble. Our goal is to make the material reusable. To enhance the construction speed, some utility are installed to the wall in advance, but not the inside outside. When a wall panel is connected, the utility line also connected together. So the channel attached outer face of the wall panel to carry IMP, and the channel attached to the inner face, the hat channel. Our goal of the connection is we can deassemble a wall board or IMP easily so that the wall panel is reusable. This is a beam to the wall connection. Again, this is very similar. So everything is bolt to the connection.
Okay, so now the beauty of our modular system is its adaptability and flexibility. With this concept, we found that we can overreach this idea of the panelized system that can take many different shapes and also serve other purposes and aid human needs. For example, in a crisis, we can create shelters for the homeless, or as a resiliency, helping communities after natural disasters by providing temporary housing communities for survivors. And perhaps the form can take a different shapes, like horizontal, and creating internal courtyards for people to gather. And so finally, to close things off, we also looked at other current systems for inspiration and feasibility for like the SIP homes that are being built in Santiago, Chile. Thanks to Rona for giving us some examples, the Expo 67 apartments in Montreal, Canada. And finally, a more recent project, the Coho apartment complex in Fort Worth, Texas, built strictly out of shipping containers. And like I said, all of these precedents helped us understand and further develop our design and its possibilities. And with that, we thank you for listening to Masamichi and I.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll turn over with comments and Q&A from the jury, please.
I'll jump in really quick. Masa Jr., this was great. I know we spoke to you a few weeks ago, and you did take a lot of our comments to heart. I love the fact that you have taught through the logistics, right? You're taking a very basic shape, which is a steel cube, and you're truly looking at how can you assemble it? How can you transport it? And what we are looking for in our arena of design and construction right now is that speed to market, the ability to be flexible and adaptable, and you're thinking through a lot of those things. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate that you have created these beautiful renderings that allow us to visualize the units and what they could become. So it is very inspiring. The one question that I would have for you is, I see how this is scalable. I see how you can easily install it and assemble it and get it to the right places. But you also spoke about human energy, right? You're looking at the interaction of something that is steel, a cube, with humans. I think what I would ask you is, when you started this process, who was your targeted user or your intended user? I see the site. I understand what you're trying to do with it, but I'm curious to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Melanie. So like I said, I guess it's, if you're more if you're around the site, you can see it's very desolate, and I guess we were just trying to liven that neighborhood. It's
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have your attention, it is our pleasure to announce.
Melanie, thank you.
Oh, sorry about that. So yeah, just in short, to answer your question, I guess we were trying to rejuvenate the Linton neighborhood itself. We're trying to offer them an access to the river and allow more energy to come in by bringing people from the peripherals.
Yeah, I'll jump in too. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Melanie.
Thank you. Let's go with Sean.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, great job, guys, on the tremendous progress from your initial proposals. I wasn't able to join you in the intermediate meeting, but it's great to see this progress. And I think similar to some of Melanie's points, all of the constructability, the reusability, and all of that is clear here. And I think taking your premise as for the micro city, one of my major questions is what I perceive here, which I understand that you could have gone as high as you wanted, as large as you wanted with this building and the framing of a micro city. This was in one of my initial comments, is I feel like I'm seeing a mixed use building in a community. So I'm kind of feel like I'm seeing a kind of development, and I was looking for that amphitheater in the micro vertical city. And I'm just taking off the premise of the vertical city. Where does that go? Where's the market in the building? Where's the school in the building? And I think that alludes to the comment on, who is this for? Maybe it's not for families, maybe it's for young professionals. But in terms of the narrative, I think dialing in on that can sell the premise and sell the idea a bit more robustly. But in terms of all the details and the fabrication work is clear. The extra just innovation thinking with the homeless shelters and all of that, I super appreciate. But I'd love to see that development in the story and in the narrative. But great work.
Thank you,
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Rona, please.
Yes, I agree with my colleagues. It's and their comments are applied to my my observations too. I thought it was excellent the way you developed the concept as we do in real life projects, from the goals and objectives, the concept of and its application to urban and regional site, and then the transformation and application, along with a description of the cost, the production, the means and methods, and construction logistics. I thought that was absolutely excellent. I concur with Sean in terms of the site itself. I was waiting for a little more detail about the adaptive reuse of what I assume is like a brownfield site. We saw an aerial of all the structures that are there, and perhaps the incremental transformation of that site sometimes can include the reuse of some of the structures that are already there, and how you might clean it up and then incrementally develop it, because that would be a precondition of bringing a development like this to life. But that said, the concept really is excellent, and certainly the details of how you apply the steel production and how it might be brought in. Actually, projects actually happen this way, particularly design build projects. And I think that it is an excellent concept, which in reality is a realistic and may be affordable and doable in the real world. So thank you very much. Very stimulating, thoughtful, professional level presentation.
Thank you very much, Rona.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Rona.
it.
Thank you, gentlemen. If you would now please stop sharing, and we'll move this right along to Level Studio, please.
Oh, sorry, give me a sec. Okay.
All set?
We're good to
Right
go.
here.
All right. So to start off, we want to thank Chris and Schuff Steel for the mentorship. It was a great process. Thank you to the jury for the feedback along the way. And thank you to Alex and AISC for making all this possible. We learned a ton about steel construction throughout the whole process. So we're Level Studio. Once again, I'm Chris.
I'm Lexi.
And I'm Jeff.
And our project, Electric Oasis, utilizes steel to imagine an electric vehicle infrastructure of the future, one that remediates contaminated sites and revitalizes local communities by creating a destination. Our presentation is divided into 4 parts: the context we're working within, the problems and opportunities within that context, our proposed solution for a site in California, and our system implementation to that site and possible other sites outside of California. So the context we're working within. Our project was conceptualized in response to both local and federal regulations. On the federal side, there's the Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act, both of which provide funding for electric vehicle infrastructure. And on the local side, there's the California Clean Cars Act, which bans the sale of gasoline vehicles beginning in 2035. This legislation was later adopted by Oregon and Washington. So our project is really focusing on the West Coast. As you can see on the map here to the right, we utilize GIS data to locate all the gas stations that could possibly be retrofitted to meet the electric vehicle needs in the future. Zooming into California, we picked a site that was approximately 200 miles outside both Los Angeles and San Francisco. And it's important to note that 200 miles is the current charging radius for most electric vehicles. And zooming in a little bit further, we picked a small rural farming community called Buttonwillow in California. It's about 1,500 people. The demographics are predominantly white and Hispanic, with a population of 33% non-US citizens, and 59% of the households have children. As you can see, this junction looks like many other along this stretch of the interstate. As you pull off, you're greeted by many gas stations, highlighted here in pink, and ours is the site on the lower left.
Right, so next we're going to dive into some of the problems we see and the opportunities that present themselves. So first, There's some major differences between gas refueling and electrical charging. Traditionally, gas station infrastructure requires larger clearances at pumps and around vehicles, while electrical charging allows for a much higher density, and the vehicles can be left unattended while charging. Second, and possibly the greater change, is that electrically charging a vehicle takes significantly longer. On average, a gas stop takes around 7 minutes to refill a tank, and a level 2 charging station, which is the most common type, takes upwards of 4.5 hours for a full charge. So considering these major differences, it becomes pretty clear we have an opportunity to reimagine the gas station typology into something that can revitalize local economies. So again, looking at the current landscape of gas stations, we typically see just 2 programs, dining and restroom facilities. With the anticipated longer stays, we can introduce more human-centric programs that the community needs. For example, on our site, we see the potential to introduce a daycare and a health clinic. Another major issue we run into when looking to reuse existing gas station sites is that they are often contaminated brownfield sites due to the petroleum leaks at the surface and subsurface levels. Left to their own devices, these sites can take up to 20, 30 years to dissipate naturally. And finally, as we had mentioned earlier, we are far behind the future demands of EV chargers. In California alone, an estimated 1.2 million EV chargers will be needed by 2030. Currently, we have just over 80,000. So with all the new state and federal legislations and more to surely follow, EV car sales in the US will only continue to grow. So considering this impending demand, steel construction with all of its benefits, such as its ability to be mass produced, rapidly assembled, fabricated off-site, and its recyclability, it quickly becomes the obvious choice to meet the challenge. Next is our solution.
So shown here is our architectural proposal, which we're going to dive into in more detail in the coming slides. The site is organized with parking and vehicular circulation flanking the edges of a central alley and amenity space. Within this central pedestrian corridor, there are a series of elevated pathways, picnic areas, and interior resiliency hubs, one of which houses the mechanical infrastructure to support the systems on site. And on the second level, the elevated pathways highlighted here. Our architectural solution is composed of 3 key components. First, the tree-like canopies, next, the elevated pathways, and third, the resiliency hubs. I'm going to dive into the canopy system first, which includes 5 modules, 2 of which are large 60-foot long spanning structures, and 3 of which are taller structures, which the elevated pathways affix to. You can see on this next slide the materiality of the canopies, including a cast steel column, a shop finish HSS tubing, and a steel mesh that spans between this tubing for shade. While our proposal is going to highlight sun shading as the primary function of the canopies, we see alternative functions that could be served depending on the site and location, such as solar, water collection, or acting as a green armature, which we'll preview at the end of the presentation on alternative sites. As Jeff mentioned, part of our goal for the project was to remediate the site in addition to the design proposal. So we were able to meet with a California-based environmental consulting specialist who advised us on the typical process per California's standards using the LEFT manual. We went with a soil vapor extraction process shown here, which is basically repeated until the site is deemed clean. This is integrated into our design within the remediation armature embedded in the helical pile footings at the base of each canopy module. And by integrating this infrastructure, the design allows the remediation to run concurrently with construction, therefore speeding up the overall timeline. The first step in this process is to do this initial testing and assessment, followed by a nutrient injection to help clean the soil. Then an aeration blower forces air contaminants from lower in the subsurface up higher to where the vacuuming armature then removes the toxins from the soil and takes them back to the central treatment system. Now we're going to walk through some of the more technical drawings for the fabrication of the canopies, which we were really fortunate enough to dial in with the help of our mentor, Chris. The canopies are structurally composed of 3 main sections. First, the foundation we just discussed. Second, the cast structural steel column. And third, the HSS pipe canopy above. Starting at the base, we can see the column plan consists of a cast inner honeycomb structure shown here. This structure allows for connection point locations around the entirety of the column. As we move up, we begin to see the armature connections to the elevated path at the bolted pad eye connections. The armatures make use of concealed splice plates, bolting connections are intended to facilitate a speedy install of the modules on the site. And finally, as we reach the top of the canopy, we see where the cast column transitions to the tubing. using the same concealed splice plate. And at the top of the sheet, you'll notice a sectional detail showing the typical bolted connection of the shading mesh. And then shown here is our long spanning canopy module rising over a drive aisle. You'll notice the shade provided. And another view looking through the central alley and amenity zone activated by a bunch of users. And then finally, a view from a parking stall, which is what a patron would see upon arrival, with the elevated pathways dancing above that Jeff's gonna walk through now.
Right, so the next component is the path. We've modularized the construction to 3 main types: straight 5-foot long sections, curved sections at varying angles, and custom landings for the connection to the different resiliency hubs. Again, here we utilize bolted connections and friction fit panels to expedite the installation process. Each module is prefabricated and finished in the shop with colored slip resistant high traffic coating and fitted with painted steel tube handrails and guardrails. And as we mentioned before, with these drastically increased refueling times, the idea was to introduce a meandering elevated path with scenic views as a means to create a sense of destination, bringing a park-like experience designed as a 15-minute loop that ascends 20 feet. Here we see the earlier section elevation where you can see the armature connection between the path and the column. And the plan at the top, we see 3 typical 5-foot by 5-foot modules. The longitudinal section just below that shows the gusset plate bolted connection at the path's inner structural tubing, as well as the landing solutions needed for ADA accessibility. The final lateral section at the bottom shows the pad-eye connection at the armatures, which we've fitted with unique cover plates that expose and celebrate the structural connections. Here is a typical axon showing those structural connection points. Here we have a rendering from the bottom to the ground floor looking up the path. As we continue to ascend upward, the path begins to frame out wide spiraling vantage points that hopefully engage the viewer. At the top of the path, we come face to face with the canopies, and we can also begin to see the connections to the different resiliency hubs. It's at these resiliency hubs, which Chris will cover next, where we're really able to redefine the fill stations more than just a transient stop and begin to give some agency back to local communities.
Right, so as Jeff mentioned, I'll be covering the final site element, the community resiliency hubs. As you can see here, they're built out of structural steel framing, clad in curtain wall glazing, and an expanded steel scrim. All of the components are modularized for ease of construction, and on the roof, you'll see PV panels to support the electric vehicle charging function. Here's an example of what the materials look like. And we want to point out that the expanded steel scrim is not just an aesthetic element, it's also performative. It lowers the solar heat gain by up to 3 hours per day, and that lessens the demand on the mechanical systems. Similarly to the path, these resiliency hubs help to create a destination by providing versatile programs based on community needs. And the plans are pretty straightforward. The ground floor is always more utilitarian, housing bathrooms and vertical transportation. This hub shows stairs, while the other houses an elevator for ADA accessibility. And the top floor is largely open plan and can house any number of programs and provides a connection to the path in the upper amenity zone. Next, we'll see a section through a resiliency hub with a series of details. Big picture is its structural steel bolted connections throughout, curtain wall glazing, expanded steel scrim, standing seam roof, PV panels. And continuing over the section, we see again the PV panels, standing seam roof, expanded steel scrim, curtain wall panel, and the recessed entry point into the resiliency hub and the connection back out to the path. Here's an example of an interior as a cafe. And based on initial jury feedback, we explored extending the opening into the resiliency hubs to create more of an indoor-outdoor experience for visitors.
So finally, we'll jump into the implementation of our project on the site. This is also another area we worked very closely with Christian to work out. So with our site located in Southern California, we've identified several major high-strength steel mills and pipe fabricators that can be sourced from both Los Angeles and Portland. So first, the panelization breakdown of the canopy. The column is broken up into separate cast steel trunks, and the large span canopy is broken down into a number of pre-assembled groups. On the far right is a theoretical shipping arrangement and approximation number of trucks required to ship to site. And then with the high volume, the number of identical pieces we're working with, we'd definitely be using reusable rigging to reduce overall waste. Next is the path broken down into separate component parts and shipped in 5 trucks. And finally, we see the resiliency hubs broken down into its component parts and shipped approximately 24 trucks for all three.
So to help visualize the transition of the site from the petroleum-based gas station to electric charging facility, we've produced a series of construction diagrams. Shown here is the existing gas station where an initial soil testing and site assessment would be done. This would be closely followed with the demolition, soil tilling, and grading phase to prep the site. And then the remediation, infrastructure, and establishment of the treatment system would follow. The off-gassing from this treatment system could support the initial energy needs during construction. At the next phase, the prefabricated modules will begin to arrive to site, delivered to the staging area. The smaller canopy modules, taking roughly 3 days for install, are erected in the central LA, and the first resiliency hub is constructed. Then the 2 remaining resiliency hubs would be constructed, and the 5-foot-long pathway modules would be hung from the canopy modules. And then finally, the initial larger canopies would be erected. Xeriscaping could begin in the LA, and at this stage, the functional components for visitors are in place, and the site could be open to patrons starting in this first zone. And then finally, the remaining large canopies would be erected, and the Oasis would be fully open to patrons, with a total estimated time of about 73 weeks. So we've also looked at applying this kit of parts at alternative sites along the West Coast. This first site shown here in the Oregon mountains, the goal being to use it as a green armature to blend into the environment and support the local biodiversity at this location. This next location in the suburbs of Portland, we envision being able to swap the mesh for a tensile fabric and use the canopy as rainwater collector. And then finally, at an urban downtown Seattle site where photovoltaics could attach to the canopy, the module could be scaled down to the size of a single parking space and potentially also charge e-bikes in addition to vehicles.
4 minutes.
So in closing, our proposal utilizes the impressive properties of steel, remediates the site, while reimagining the traditional gas station visit from one of a banal one to a more human-centric experience. So we're gonna play an animation in the background while we open it up for questions. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I guess as we watch the animation, let's go ahead and begin with jury feedback with the same tempo. Melanie, Sean, and Rona. So Melanie, if we could begin with you.
Can you hear the airport, Alex? If so, let's go to Sean next. Are you good? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I will start by saying I love your concept. I think what I find really intriguing about this is you've taken something, and I think you said this, Lexi, something banal, right? We do this all the time. We get into our vehicles, we drive it somewhere, and we go get the gas filled. Obviously, we're looking at electric vehicle charging at this point, but you've taken something very mundane that we give not a second thought to usually and injected a certain level of magic into not just waiting for the charging, but also what you can do with that time you are waiting for that charge to be complete. So I do love it for that. We're all looking for efficiencies in our life nowadays, and the last thing we want to do is wait around and do nothing while we wait for our cars to charge. So appreciate you taking the time to do this. I also know one of my biggest comments the last time we met with you was how do we locate something similar in different regions? Can you adapt it to different areas? And you have showcased how you would do that. So I very much appreciate that too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Okay, Sean, please.
Great job, guys. I love this concept, and it was great seeing just the expanded detailing and consideration of different sites. And for me, again, thinking of your premise, I made a note here that there's an excellent framing of the problem, the conditions of the site, and the opportunities, which I think is a crucial aspect of presenting your design solution. I guess you might call it as kind of the only answer. I think you guys have done a good job of doing that. So from the human aspect, it makes sense. We're there could be up there for up to 4 hours. What are you going to do? I was curious of how you might address as a hypothetical in thinking about this, or just in framing these design proposals in general, is how do you persuade or pitch the developer or the charging network company to invest in all of this? And I totally get the point about, well, I guess I'll frame it this way. I think that one missing part of your pitch is the economic potential to doing this, the added economic opportunity of keeping people there longer. I think that there's an opportunity to present, for instance, this pathway as something that entices people to go into the shops, go into the cafes and spend money. And you have all the program there, but I think just in the presentation, highlighting that this is, yes, it's for human well-being and stuff, and I get it. And yeah, it might sound kind of capitalistic, but to appeal to the developer to make this thing, you have to kind of touch on that. And so that'd be my only point. All of the design aspects, all of that, super strong. So just making that point to the pitch to sell that, to perhaps sell the idea a bit more strongly. But excellent work. Really loved the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Rona, please.
I agree with Sean and Melanie, and I don't have too much to add in addition to certainly Melanie's comments about the thorough concept, both from the test fit and site aspects to the functional and technical criteria, production, logistics, cost, and the features that you both set to a specific location. I'm guessing it's along Route 5. I actually been there, up and down that stretch, but I don't know that particular spot. You know, we have our spots where we stop, and I tried not to drive it too much over the years, although I made probably over 100 trips to the Central Valley. But applying it to a real life setting and then showing us the alternative settings and different scales is totally appropriate and relevant, and it really brings the concept to life. I totally agree with Sean about expanding the concept. Perhaps it was beyond the scope of this particular competition, but expanding the concept also to other geographies, like just to pick something. I hope I live long enough to see one of these actually get built. But if you've driven from New York to Washington, D.C., that stretch through New Jersey, there are a lot of opportunities. They're big rest stops. So the concept of having a pro forma with a public or a private sector developer, some of the roads, they're public. Some of them are private, repurposing not just of aging gas stations, but aging shopping centers. Because if you're blessed to have a couple of kids or a couple of grandkids and you're driving along that stretch, these applications, and in steel or steel and other means and methods, and maybe other forms that are totally appropriate to the climate and the geography of places that are not arid. This is more of an arid type of application. But what would you build in Florida? What would you build in New Jersey? What about that big stretch along Route 80 that goes through Montana? So I think that the concept in its next generation can be applied that way. And then, of course, coming up with a real pro forma that has numbers and might be both a collaborative with a builder like Chris and a development partner or a public partner might be an interesting way to pitch it in real life as a development proposal. And thank you very much. Very, very interesting, innovative, and totally applicable solution in steel.
Thanks for that, Rona. Appreciate you, Rona. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's move right along to Ten Lee. We could stop the share and Ten, take it away.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Ten Lee, and I'm excited to share with you my proposed project. That's called Transconnect. It's located in Soma, San Francisco, and the purpose of this project is to reshaping the modern commute in urbanization. Then from the history, like the transportation has been an integral part of our daily commute, and its evolution over time is common knowledge. So from travel by boat, train, bicycle, car, and airplane. So the history of transportation has been like incredible journey. So however, I think like the investment in transportation technology are not limited to these traditional mode. So now we're witnessing the new emergence of a more sustainable option like eVTOL, stand for electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, and Hyperloop, a concept proposed by Elon Musk, and autonomous car, and even a smarter EV. So in this project, I aim to introduce the EV technology to San Francisco and Bay Area, so which will provide a more sustainable mode of the transportation. So to better understanding about how the sustainable transportation can play a role in our daily life, I believe studying the geography and population of San Francisco, particularly in SoMa neighborhood, is suggested. So San Francisco had a population like over 800,000 with a median age of approximately like 38. And the average car ownership per household was just only like 0.43 in 2019, as opposed to the nation average of 1.9. So given the city high population density, I think it would be informative to understand how the car sharing services such as Lyft, Uber are utilized throughout the week, and how long the commuters spend on average, like 20 to 30 minutes traveling to and from their destination. So the SFMTA is forecasting like 25% increase in job and a 15% increase in population by 2035, and is currently struggling to secure a funding from the transportation system. So furthermore, the various modes of transportation available in the city are not well integrated, and by 2035, only electric or zero emission vehicle will be sold in California. So that's why we need a more sustainable transportation to align with our integrated living condition. So it's about the time to introduce the new EV plan. So we can call it a taxi. This could be a promising solution to this problem, and I remain hopeful that this new transportation option can make a positive impact. So why I choose the San Francisco? Because I'm local here, and then I see like, even though like despite of the recent completion of the new transit center like Salesforce Center, but we may notice that it's not serving the city efficiently. So although it's currently provide the bus transit service, we will not have like we will require like a more comprehensive option in the future. And for the instance, integrating the transit center with train and subway will requires an investment like over like 5 billion option. So that's why I want to propose a San Francisco Caltrain station in SoMa into a new mega transit hub. And this is more cost effective and timely solution. And currently the San Francisco Caltrain station has an explorer site that is intersected by the Interstate 280 freeway. So here's the new floor plan. This is ground floor plan for the proposed mega transit hub, which will elevate our daily commute to a more efficient and intelligent experience, reducing the time-consuming travel and wait time. So the ground floor plan focus on the key elements such as a new information desk and train ticketing, as well as by parking and services. All the features, including the retail spaces for food and beverage, and also like a bus waiting station across the 1,000. So here's a sneak peek at the exterior and interior of the new building, both from the street view and inside. And then, as mentioned earlier, we noticed that the I-280 crossing the site, and it is my intention to maintain this freeway route, because I think it's pretty like crucial entry point from the South Bay to San Francisco. So in terms of the design, I plan to include the tunnel that allow the freeway to pass through the mega transit hub. This floor can be utilized as a designated departure and arrival area for car sharing service such as Uber or Lyft. And I believe this unique feature has a potential to become an iconic element of the hub. And then from this slide, I would like to suggest a design freeway to show the movement for the car enter to the building and how people transition from the Uber to different mode of transportation, such as train or air taxi or even the bus. So I also, for this floor, I also propose a gym amenity to promote health and wellness. So imagine commuting to work, stopping at this transit hub to exercise, and then grab a quick bite to eat, and then prepare for the work day ahead. So now this is a key feature for this proposed transit hub. So can you take air taxi for work, for school, and even like for the short distance travel? I think you can. So in this study, like we have like 3 elements to determine how the air travel work. We call it FATO, like the final approach and takeoff, and seating area and ticketing. And why am I advocating for this adoption of the eVTOL in our daily commute? Because I think it's more environmental friendly, faster, and safer mode of the transportation. And there are several startups working pretty hard to bring the electric plane to the market right now, including this Germany Lilium Jet. So this has a range of 300 kilometers or 186 miles per charge, and a top speed of 300 kilometers per hour or like 186 miles per hour, with a capacity of 4 passengers and 1 pilot. This technology is extremely promising, and I think, as you see on the top right, that's the travel map illustrate how fast and how convenient it can be. You can travel up to 75 kilometers or like 47 miles within just 15 minutes. I used the same calculation to create my own master plan for San Francisco transportation map, and the radius for each circle represent a destination that can be reached within 5 minutes by the air taxi. For example, you travel from San Francisco to the South Bay, would take you less than like 20 minutes, as opposed to an hour or more by car during the rush hour. So this slide will show you the elevation of the building as well as the rendering of the experience from the skyport level. This is very detailed section showing the various programs inside the building to cater to our daily needs, such as gym, outdoor park, rentable workplace, restaurant, short-term stay, retail store, along with the skyport and parking. And why this is exciting project, it is quite complex when you look at the building section. And then in the short session, I will present you various transportation options that interact in the building. On the ground floor, we have the bus and train station. The second and third floor, that's where the car enter to the building. And then the skyport is located above them. So as you may wonder, how can I get to that final design? So basically, I began with the small design concept to access to the skyport, so which require an elevator core to go up. So initial phase of the design was a column. However, when I scale up the design, with each span like being approximately like 200 feet, I encountered a problem. The structural core was at risk of collapsing due to the lateral force caused by strong wind or earthquake for this scale project. So to address that issue, I revisit the design and for the structural core and add a steel plate shear wall at both ends of the column, which each column end supporting the main truss structure. I created a wood model to demonstrate how this strengthened the building. And this is how it looks like in the 3D view when we scale up the structural core. Then in order to minimize the number of structural core required, I explore the alternative structural design. This approach eliminates the need of the parallel cores. This floor plan show like the design of the entire core structure system. And for this slide, demonstrate the structural component in each core module. So overall, the system consists of 3 main components: flooring, vertical core, and the trusses that reinforce and stabilize the building. And thanks to Casey, my mentor in fabrication, who provide me with a deeper understanding with the detail element that an architect may not be familiar with. So this drawing demonstrates how the structure element come together to support the overall architecture design. And during my mentor section with Casey, I was able to learn a great deal about the term associated with the steel fabrication. And thanks to Casey and Alex again, such as AESS, stand for architecturally exposed structural steel. This term refers to the use of the structural steel elements that are visible and exposed in a building design. So due to the scope of this project, not all the structure can be in AESS 4 or AESS-C, which is the highest showcase element category. So I divided. So for instance, in the top view, I will select AESS1, which is a basic steel structure, and then categorize all the cable truss that hold the facade as a AESS2 because I think the steel structure is more than like 20 feet from the human eyes. And then the beam below will fall in AESS3, and the main big truss should show the aesthetic appearance, which I believe it should be classified as AESS4. And during our discussion on the sustainable design, Casey introduced me the concept of thermal break. And I think that's a brilliant idea that I would like to incorporate into this building. A thermal break is a material with low thermal conductivity placed in an extrusion with a purpose to reducing the flow of thermal energy, so that prevent the heat from outside to the inside of the building. And also, I also discussed with Casey about the steel color. I want it to be white. So I was debating like between hot dip galvanized and the metallized coating. It can be known as the thermal spray coating TSC. And finally, I chose the TSC as my
5 minutes.
Yeah. So it would be, because of this type of project, the TSC would be beneficial due to the long service life under most conditions. So they can be applied regardless of ambient temperature and humidity, and tend to have a better resistance to physical impact. And to ensure the safety and accommodate the project size, the use of prefabricated component manufactured offsite is preferred. So this approach leads to a faster construction time, cost saving, and higher quality control than being done in the construction site. Furthermore, I think this method also promotes the sustainability by reducing the environmental impact of a commercial construction project. And thanks to the discussion with Rona and Melanie during the jury and meet, so you may wonder how the case study can be applied to other cities. For instance, is it possible to build a skyport within an existing infrastructure, such as the parking garage rooftop? In this scenario, the skyport location, known as the fader, can be placed in various positions depending on the parking garage shape. So additionally, you have like 2 or 3 boarding area can be established around the fader. And then that allowing for easy transition. And to demonstrate this concept, I showcase how car can convenient drive up to the final destination before boarding to the air taxi terminal. And here's the final layout that I suggested for the design, for the design layout for the skyport that can be applied to any city around the world, including like a bigger city in Texas, like Houston, Dallas, or Chicago, or even like New York. And as you may see this master plan, the black dot around the map, that's the location of the microport for the landing. It's either built in the high-rise building or like it's either was built in the existing garage rooftop structure. So the commuter have better option to choose where they want to land. So yeah, thank you for listening. I'm grateful for the opportunity today to present with all you guys, and hopefully that's our profession can design an adaptable infrastructure building that align with the new technology in transportation system. So thank you all, and glad to see all the good work from each team.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ten. Let's move forward with the comments. Let's begin with Melanie, please.
Thank you, Ben. I really appreciate the amount of work that you put into this, as well as the thought that went into it. I will also say that out of the 3 projects that we're looking at today, at least personally, I feel this is the most complex of it. And in large part because of the scale, right? You're taking something that is a very complex challenge and trying to encapsulate it within one facility. And not only are you dealing with transportation related challenges, you're looking at providing spaces that allow for work, for play within the space. So it's huge. And I appreciate how you have kind of compartmentalized, segmented, and been able to illustrate all the things that are encapsulated within this. I would say the one thing that I want to make sure you're thinking about is I see this as an urban design challenge, not just something that is specific to the site, but also you're bringing in modes of transportation into this facility. They're arriving by car or bus or train, and they're parking in this facility. So you are actually creating a nexus of people that are honing in on this space. And I think what I'd like you to think about is how does that affect everybody else who's already around the site, right? I'm assuming there are businesses, I'm assuming there are manufacturing facilities. A lot of the reasons why airports are usually a little out of the way is because of how complex those challenges can get. But I do love everything that you did. So thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Melanie. Sean, please.
Yeah, thank you, Ten. I mean, first, again, I love all the progress. I wasn't able to join you in the intermediate meeting, but I see the added work you've done with the human experience, which I know was one of your comments in the initial proposals. And I think Melanie characterized it perfectly. You put yourself in a position to tackle something extraordinarily complex, and I do think that that's commendable, and it's obvious that you have an interest in this. I think a few things that I would encourage you in this, because with that, the idea and the problem and all of that, I think is clearly identified and again clearly framed. I would love to see something that homes in on a particular issue you're trying to solve. So again, like as I understood, your premise was that this is a very futurist project too. And so you're speculating a lot. It's very speculative, I guess is a better term. I would love to see you kind of home in on a particular problem in this context where you have limited time and you're tasked with using steel in a particular way. To me, it seemed the problem is managing this diversity of transportation modes. That's how I understood you framing the problem, is that this is going to be the future. There's going to be less cars. We're going to be traveling by electric plane, by Hyperloop, by, I guess, self-driving vehicles, all those kinds of things. And so what I was looking for is like, how is your facility the antidote to managing all of that when people show up here? That might be an example of homing in. When you try to take San Francisco as a whole, and I think Melanie alluded to this kind of urban issue, I think the challenge in the context of a steel competition is how do I start to engage with steel or innovative ways to use steel at the scale of a city? And so those are some of my comments, but the problem is a real one. I think it's a very urban one. I think the facade detailing and all of that is very compelling. And I think there are opportunities as you think further and using these kinds of things. I'd love you to sell me a bit more on, why is the facade like this, or why is it still used in this manner? I understood how it all worked and how it all came together, but how does that tie into your tackling the solution that you're obviously very, very interested in and studied in? But other than that, the progress is tremendous, from the line drawings to all the people and all the renderings, and love it, and well done.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. Rona, please.
I agree with thank you, Then. It's really an excellent master planning concept with an application of a particular steel means and methods and technology, which I thought you covered very thoroughly. I agree. The scale is a bit overwhelming. We talked about this before. If you had if you had the opportunity to see the Salesforce center going in and the big transportation hub there, and consider the opportunities and constraints, but especially constraints of building at that scale. Projects like that, they take a couple of decades. So as I agree with Sean, as you look ahead to optimize and develop what's already a really sound concept from a modular steel construction standpoint, look at hubs, take a look at hubs that already exist and how this might be applied to maybe a particular transportation mode. So just pick something that's a thorn in my side, like the abandoned Greyhound terminal in Oakland along Route 980. Existing buildings like this are opportunities to apply. Maybe it's not all transportation modes, but bus travel. This is something real that is actually used, and especially in cities, but also in what about rural applications? If you could take that for example, or you look at the success or the opportunities of the eBART at the Oakland Airport. The Oakland Airport is another opportunity where there are these big heat islands of cars, but in fact, there's a lot of opportunity at an airport like Oakland to take the transportation opportunities to get there to another level, using the kind of concept that you developed along with its development features. Who might it be done with? How could it be leveraged as a private sector or a public sector investment, consistent with the kind of infrastructure improvements that we're seeing that reimagine existing hubs for other modes that are quite resilient, like bus travel? So I think with all that said, the structural concept, very interesting, and I think applying it, you're brave to apply it to something this grand scale. This is a mega project, and how can you break it up into smaller components that are applicable in smaller settings? And thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Rona. Great comments. So now I guess we're getting closer to the moment of truth. We'll have the Zach, who's helping us with AISC. Thank you, Zach, for standing by. It's going to pull our jury to a private deliberation room, and we will launch a poll just to make sure that our audience is engaged. Of course, the final say-so will be left up to the jury. So let's go ahead and start with deliberation. All right, so while they do that, they have 10 minutes or less to decide. And as I said before, sometimes I think we've had one instance where the jury needed additional time and it took them over the weekend to come back with the answers. Hopefully that won't happen, to keep everyone on pins and needles here today. But we would like to learn a little bit more about all of the individuals here today. And I believe, I'm not sure if Casey Brown is in. I know we missed him. I did deliver a message. in the beginning. But Casey, if you would like to introduce yourself and give some words of support to 10. I know you all work together very hard, and I think we would like to hear from you.
Yeah, and my apologies for being late. My phone had me in another time zone, so I didn't think we'd start.
Okay.
My apologies, but it was a real pleasure working with 10. He's obviously a brilliant individual, and as we just heard, a big mega project, tackling a whole big complex set of issues, and it's bold to even contemplate that, let alone just the size and scale of the project. Checks all the boxes that we look at in terms of how do we transform our cities. You can't expand horizontally, and you have to expand upward and inward and renew and all of that. 10's concept really checks the boxes on all of that. It was a little intimidating, just trying to help him and work with him, because I work for a much smaller fabricator that would have no business for, taking on, the steelwork of something, that immense in size. But conceptually, what he's trying to do, and design wise, the type of structure that it is, again, not just helping solve problems, but just helping reimagine, cities. And I think it's he takes it very personal, because he lives out there, and it's real issues that you have to deal with day in and day out. So the scale of everything that 10 that has imagined is very impressive, and really like the concept of how he's framed it up, and thinking in terms of sustainable. I know this is obviously, an AIC, sponsor competition, but the things that, and by the way, the presentation preceding 10's was super impressive. I caught most of that. And so all the things that you're talking about doing, in steel, you can do, very creative things in concrete and wood and the materials, but the type of projects that we're talking about here, really steel is the only viable option. So again, I apologize for being late, but it's been a real pleasure working with 10, and wish you the best of luck.
Yeah, thanks, Casey.
Thank you. So I really wanted to get maybe some questions in here as we wait. I'm getting some notifications that they're still in deliberations, so we don't have an yet. I wanted to ask Lexi, Chris, and Jeff a little bit about what kind of y'all's journey was into your interest in architecture, and how that's been for you, and what kind of led you to declare this is what I want to do. So let's begin with Jeff.
Really starting with the big questions, huh?
Jeff?
Right. Personal journey, I grew up with it. I think I just was exposed to it a lot. Aside from, just being inclined, playing with Legos, it just kind of made sense. So, I just kind of was on a pretty set track. It wasn't really till I was in grad school and I worked with Chris and Lexi. I really found the passion on the fabrication side. I ran the wood shop and the digifab there, and that kind of renewed this passion, kind of rethinking, relooking at it. So in a nutshell, that's been my path into this architecture venture.
Thank you. Christian Tarasi.
Oh yeah, I always joke it was alphabetically the first on the list of majors, but I stuck with it after that. And as Jeff said, we've now been working together for like 10 years, the three of us, all still working full time on the side, and are just in the early throngs of trying to get an office off the ground. So we always look for competitions that have a sense of materiality to them, so that we can broaden our knowledge. And this was a great opportunity for us to do that.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay. I got a note. They're almost done. They're not quite in. We'll obviously know when they pop in, but they're almost there. So Lexi, same question for you.
Oh gosh. Okay. I originally wanted to do engineering, and then in undergraduate, I found a passion for design, and so I changed my decision of a major. But I'll echo what Chris and Jeff had said, which is when we met in grad school, we started working on smaller fabrication competitions together and learning about the kind of detailing and the kind of to make, visions come to reality is what really interests me, and working with these two is always fun. So yeah, that's kind of what our goal is, to start an office. So we're really working towards that right now.
Fantastic. Visions come to reality. That is phenomenal. All right. So on that vein of engineer versus or encounters architecture, one of our team kind of has composition in that regard, Junior and Masa. Junior, can you touch maybe on your end? What do you think of that? What does that intersection look like for you between engineering and architecture?
Yeah, I consider myself very lucky to be in a JRMA, which is a multidisciplinary office. It's having the resources like Masamichi within just a couple steps away to bounce ideas on constructability and size of beams and whatnot. It's I think it's a great resource and to have close by.
Thank you, Masa.
Yeah, it's always a coordination. Coordination is a key. So always the structural engineer and architecture need to talk about it, how to accomplish the solution. So that's why I decided, I'm a structural engineer, but that's why I decided to learn architecture and going to university. This is a really good opportunity to work with Junior. I learned quite a bit, really a lot of things. Sometimes overwhelming, but yeah, really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Ten, how did you get into architecture?
Yeah, basically I start just the same way with JL. I start with the Lego block, and then it just grew the interest in me like year after years. And then I started with the interior design for my bachelor. Then I think I would want to explore further, not just only like interior. So that's why I decided to go to architecture. So that's how I landed here with a cool presentation and meeting with other people for the competition like this.
Thank you, Tan. So this idea of modularization came up several times during pretty much all of the concepts. And then the discussion on economies of scale sort of was tied into that discussion as well. I was wondering, Jeff, what do you think? What is your perspective on, really grabbing this concept of modularizing construction approaches and making it more of a mainstream in the way we approach construction? And if you see, as an industry, whether or not we're missing into going at it full force, for lack of better words.
Yeah, I mean, the transition from, early ideas and concepts to actually rolling it out into a market and applying it, it always takes time, right? So I don't know if I'm the right person to ask that question, for a holistic answer, but yeah, I mean, I'm in New York now. I work out of there, and so you see more and more larger scale projects that really utilize modularization. So it's really exciting to see that, it's something that makes sense and theoretical come to life and be actually applied. I'm not sure if I exactly answered your question, but there it is.
No, it was great. Yeah, I think that's kind of the big concept on what the question that we get, that we see written in journals, in articles. What does the future of architecture look like? And so we, there's depending on who you ask and sort of what that perspective looks like. I think there's always a concept that we want to be innovative and do things and challenge ourselves. However, it's really easier said than done, right? Because someone has to be the first one to do something and to dream up ideas and to sort of propose. And so executions is the other part of it. And I think one of the premises of the Forge Prize is that it allows for this type of innovation. I really describe it as a lab of some sort, where you can propose ideas and bring that into the discussion, because that's in reality how you start changing how we approach things. And so I know that, it's without saying that every individual that was part of the Forge Prize this year, and including and especially, I would say, the designers have done a fantastic job in showing us what that promise looks like. so that we could keep ourselves and our minds open and eager to absorb more, digest more, and think more creatively in the way we approach our built environment. So with that said, I think we're getting, I think everyone's back in the room now. The jury was tasked to nominate someone to deliver the news, and so they've probably made that decision. And so we'll turn it over to the jury, and let's cross our fingers and see the way this goes. So congratulations to everyone. We'll turn it over to the jury.
So everyone and members of the public who have joined us, I'm Rona Rothenberg. I'm honored and privileged to represent myself and Melanie Harris, our colleagues, Melanie Harris and Sean Joyner, our august jury, and all of you thoughtful professional colleagues who have contributed to the competition and then submitted for the awards, both the 3 finalists and those other entries that we reviewed previously. So just starting with the second runner-up, the Transconnect project, the second runner-up, and we were really impressed by the vast and brave urban design concept. Anyone who's done urban master planning knows that these are major projects that take decades, and to approach this as a transportation and urban planning exercise and a technical steel application exercise shows a real depth of thought and academic discipline on your part, addressing the planning aspects, and then setting to that a particular means and methods of steel modular production. And so we honor that with the second runner-up spot, and thank you very much. The first runner-up is the adaptive microcities, Masanucci and Junior. It really an excellent concept. We were really impressed by you're going about adaptive reuse, and then setting to that a very well-developed production and assembly application of modular produced steel, and apply that to the adaptive reuse of an existing site in a real life city that you know has other sites like that, and then showing us comparable across the generations from the 1960s to the present of similar modular concepts for adaptive reuse of mixed use residential and commercial settings. And we honor that with the first runner-up. And then the award is going to be given to the Electric Oasis team. Chris, Lexley, and Jeffrey, thank you very much. Not just for California, where I've kind of California-centric career, but for applications, real life applications across the United States. Really an exceptional real life presentation that's totally applicable to hundreds and hundreds of sites all over the United States. We tend to be kind of a horizontal kind of country, right? Well, you know,
that's right.
This is a vehicular kind of society, and maybe we'll improve, but taking a concept like this and applying it to the infrastructure that we already have here, which is a horizontal infrastructure for transportation, and looking at a really exceptionally well-designed and well-presented, well-thought-through concept with the type of conceptual presentation that we would be doing if we were competing for an award in the California state or the federal government for the kind of funds that you described, which would underwrite and parlay a concept like this. And so we congratulate you and thank you for developing that at every level, the conceptual level, the design level, the financial level, and of course the technical, production, manufacture, transport, as well as the pre-design aspects that are related to if you've ever cleaned up a site that has underground storage tanks. This is the expression I used with the jury. It's really a pain. So being able to do that, well, these sites, what we have to do is reuse what we have. And this is a great way to reuse what we already have and transform it into a resilient, sustainable and lasting solution for horizontal transportation hubs. So on that basis, our jury is proud to award you the Forge Prize for 2023. And again, we thank you all for having us and the honor of participating in the jury with all of you. And I know our profession is in good hands with solutions like these. I wish you all the best in your long and successful careers.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you all so much. This has been fantastic. I'm filled with goosebumps. Rona's totally right. Our future is in great hands. I think all of the, you know, I want to give a big thank you and shout out to our fabricators for lending their expertise, to our designers for the brilliant ideas. And I think I want to say, as we follow them through their careers, you heard it first on the Forge Prize when his big ideas come to realization. So thank you, Tan. Thank you, Masa. Thank you, Junior. And congratulations to Level Studio for winning the 2023 Forge Prize. Stay tuned for the 2024 Forge Prize as we continue to elevate and really celebrate the amazing talent that emerging architects have. So we'll see you and thank you all again. Have a great rest of your day.